People don't check on you when you're down, they check on you when they can't figure out how you stood back up. There's a strange shift that happens the moment you start evolving in ways nobody expected. Suddenly, the same people who overlooked your struggle begin circling around your name like it's a headline they missed. Mutual friends get interrogated. Old acquaintances come out of hiding. People who haven't spoken to you in months suddenly want updates. And the funniest part? They package it all as concern, when deep down, it's confusion wrapped in curiosity. Here's a fact that fits this moment perfectly. Psychology research shows that people feel more threatened by someone else's sudden growth than by their failure, because growth forces them to rethink their own choices. That's what's happening around you. You didn't just step up, you shifted the entire balance of how people perceived you. And now, they're scrambling to understand what changed, because admitting you changed means admitting they didn't. They're asking, are they okay? Not because you look broken, but because you look rebuilt in a way they didn't approve, predict, or prepare for. You disrupted their mental blueprint of you, and humans don't like losing their internal GPS, especially when it comes to someone they thought they had figured out. So now they're peeking into your life like nosy neighbors pretending to check the weather. And let's be honest, this is the same group that never asked if you were okay when life was punching you like it had a personal vendetta. Back then, you were easy to read, easy to comfort, easy to underestimate. But now, you're glowing, you're growing, and you're moving in silence so effectively that your progress feels like a plot twist. Suddenly, everyone's a detective, collecting information like your life is a limited series on Netflix. This is what happens when your transformation becomes louder than their assumptions, when your absence speaks clarity and your comeback rewrites history. You didn't become mysterious, you became untouchable. And now, the whole room is whispering your name, hoping someone else explains what they can't. Let's get into it. Number 1. They're asking about you because you finally broke the version of you they benefited from. People don't start checking on you out of nowhere. There's always a trigger, and in this case, it's the moment you stopped being the version of yourself that made life convenient for others. For a long time, you probably carried weight that wasn't yours. You tolerated behavior you shouldn't have. You gave too many chances, excused too many patterns, and made yourself smaller than you needed to be. And as long as you played that role, they were comfortable. They liked you predictable, accessible, and easy to read. But then something shifted. You woke up from the version of yourself that revolved around keeping the peace, and you moved into the version that protects your peace. That's when concern suddenly showed up in people who never cared about your well-being before. When people ask mutual friends if you're okay, they're not checking on your mental health. They're checking on their lost access. They're wondering if the door they once freely walked through has finally been locked for good. Your growth took away their shortcuts. The old you said yes too quickly, forgave too easily, and explained too much. The new you doesn't operate like that, and they don't know how to handle it. So instead of confronting their discomfort, they disguise it as worry. The truth is, the moment you released the version of yourself that made life simple for others, you forced them to face the reality that they'd never truly appreciated you. They were attached to your softness, your patience, your emotional availability. And when you pulled that back, they felt the absence more than you felt the separation. That's why your name comes up in conversations you're not present for. You didn't go missing, their advantage did. Their questions aren't rooted in love or genuine care. They are rooted in fear. Fear that you've finally realized your worth. Fear that you won't revert back to the version of you that made them feel superior, safe, or entitled. Fear that you've outgrown the space where they had influence. When they ask if you're okay, what they're really asking is, are we still relevant in your life? And deep down, they already know the answer. Number 2, Your growth exposed the stagnation. They tried to hide. There's a discomfort people feel when someone they once saw as equal suddenly pulls ahead, not out of competition, but out of genuine growth. When you started leveling up in ways that weren't loud or dramatic, it made people around you rethink their own choices. Your improvement didn't just change your life, it exposed the places where they've been standing still, and instead of celebrating your progress, many prefer to mask their insecurity with concern. That's why they're asking mutual friends if you're okay. They're hoping to hear that your transformation has cracks in it, that maybe you're struggling privately, or that this version of you won't last. Because if you can grow, then they have to admit they could have too, but didn't. The truth is, your progress reveals everything they've procrastinated, avoided, or denied. You becoming more confident makes their insecurities louder. You becoming more focused makes their lack of direction harder to ignore. You setting standards makes their comfort zones look like cages. You didn't expose them intentionally. Your evolution naturally highlighted their stagnation. And humans have a habit of taking things personally, even when it has nothing to do with them. People who stayed the same for years start to feel threatened when someone from their circle breaks the pattern. It challenges their self-image. It questions their lifestyle. It forces them to ask themselves difficult questions that they've spent years dodging. So instead of sitting with that discomfort, they shift the spotlight onto you. Asking if you're okay becomes a socially acceptable way to hide the real fear, that they are being left behind by someone they thought would always stay at their pace. Their curiosity isn't rooted in care, it's rooted in comparison. They want to understand how you did it without the steps showing. They want to make sense of how you're becoming someone they can no longer relate to. Your growth didn't just change you, it disrupted the unspoken agreement that everyone was supposed to stay the same. Now they're left staring at their own stillness, and your movement makes it impossible for them to ignore it any longer. Number 3, they can't decode you anymore, and it threatens their sense of control. One of the most unsettling things for people is when someone they thought they understood suddenly becomes unreadable. For years, you might have followed patterns they could predict, reacting a certain way, giving certain responses, even tolerating certain behaviors. That predictability gave them a sense of control over you, a quiet confidence that they could anticipate your moves. But the moment you stopped being that person, everything changed. You became unpredictable in a way that's intentional, deliberate, and unshakable. And that unpredictability terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. People ask mutual friends about you because they're trying to map the new terrain. They want to know if you're still normal, still functioning the way they expect, still available to be influenced or manipulated. It's not about checking your mental health. It's about checking their grip. They can't stand the fact that you've become self-directed, independent, and impervious to the scripts they once wrote for you. That loss of control makes them anxious, and human beings always seek to reduce anxiety, even if it means gossiping or prying through someone else's life. Your evolution has turned you into a puzzle they can't solve. Every new boundary you set, every decision you make without consulting them, every moment you refuse to react to their provocation is a reminder that they no longer have leverage. It's uncomfortable to watch someone thrive without needing permission or approval, and impossible to digest that your life can move forward while theirs remains static. They're obsessed with knowing if you're okay, because if something had gone wrong, their mental map would return to normal. But when you keep thriving in silence, thriving on your own terms, it forces them to confront a reality they'd rather ignore. You are no longer theirs to predict, influence, or control. And that realization makes them more curious, more watchful, and yes, more desperate to find someone to report back to. because admitting outright that they've lost their influence is far too vulnerable, far too humiliating. Your power is no longer a secret, and they're scrambling to comprehend a life that doesn't revolve around their expectations. Number 4. Your withdrawn energy forced them to confront their own behavior. When you start stepping back, pulling away, and engaging less with people who took you for granted, the ripples are felt louder than any words you could speak. Your absence is more than a gap. It's a mirror. It forces people to face the ways they treated you, the respect they didn't give, and the boundaries they repeatedly crossed. They can't hide behind their casual behavior anymore because suddenly they're confronted with the reality that you are no longer the person who tolerated it. Your energy has changed, and in doing so, it reflects their actions in a way that makes them uncomfortable. This is why they start asking mutual friends about you. They're not genuinely concerned. They're trying to process the impact of their own choices without admitting guilt. They replay moments in their head, times they spoke over you, dismissed you, or took your patience for granted. They might even feel resentment, because your withdrawal shows them that their behavior had consequences they never wanted to face. They ask if you're okay as a way to distance themselves from their own reflection, hoping someone else will give them reassurance that you're still vulnerable in some way. Your quiet pullback disrupts their narrative. For years, they assumed your presence and engagement were constants. They expected your energy, attention, and emotional labor to be endlessly available. But when you redirect that energy toward yourself, you break that assumption. It's not dramatic, it's just consistent, and consistency and self-respect forces others to acknowledge that the old dynamics can't continue. The more you stay withdrawn, the more they are forced to sit with uncomfortable truths about how they acted when you were fully present for them. Their questions about you are, in reality, questions about themselves. Did I push too far? Did I take them for granted? Can they recover from my treatment? They don't want to admit these thoughts directly, so they outsource their reflection through others. Your change doesn't just affect you, it acts as a spotlight on everyone who counted on the old version of you, revealing cracks in behavior they hoped would remain invisible. And as long as you stay untouchable in your energy, they'll keep seeking updates, trying to reconcile your growth with their stagnation. Number 5. Your absence is doing more damage than your presence ever did. There's a strange kind of power in leaving a space that used to be filled with you. For years, people could take your presence for granted. They relied on your patience, your guidance, your energy, and your emotional labor without thinking twice. You were there, always available, always giving. But once you step back, even slightly, the vacuum you leave becomes impossible to ignore. Suddenly, they feel the weight of what they never truly appreciated. Your absence is louder than any argument, louder than any confrontation, louder than anything your presence could have ever shouted. This is why they start asking mutual friends if you're okay. It's not about concern for your well-being. It's about realizing how much they counted on you. The truth is, your presence never truly demanded acknowledgement, but your absence forces recognition. They can no longer operate in autopilot, assuming you'll always be there to fix things, to listen, to support, or to absorb their inconsistencies. When you withdraw, they're confronted with the truth. They relied too heavily on someone who never owed them unconditional availability, and now that resource has disappeared. People start to panic because they feel the impact personally. They might not even realize they're missing you in ways that matter emotionally, mentally, or even strategically. But the truth hits them. They can no longer manipulate situations, rely on your compliance, or take your energy for granted. You're no longer a fixture in their daily scripts, and that absence breaks routines they thought were unshakable. They're scrambling, seeking updates, trying to gauge if your distance is temporary or permanent, and in that scramble, they betray their own dependence on you. Your absence isn't passive. It's a mirror showing them how much they leaned on you and how unprepared they are to stand without your constant presence. You've become a force without moving, a disruption without speaking, a truth they can't ignore. And that realization, how much influence they lost simply because you stopped being available, is exactly why your absence does more damage than your presence ever did. It awakens reflection, accountability, and discomfort in a way your mere presence never could. Number 6. They're trying to measure your strength without facing you directly. When people realize that you've grown stronger, smarter, and more untouchable, they often can't confront it head-on. It's uncomfortable to see someone rise while they remain stagnant, and instead of dealing with that discomfort directly, they take the indirect route. They start asking mutual friends about you, looking for answers that give them a sense of control without the risk of facing the reality of your growth themselves. They're trying to measure your strength without ever admitting to themselves that you're now operating on a higher level, one they no longer have influence over. This behavior isn't new. It's a defense mechanism. It's easier to get second-hand information than to face the truth. They don't want to see you thriving because it forces them to confront their own limitations, choices, and failures. By sending questions through mutual connections, they can pretend they're concerned while secretly gathering intelligence. They want to know if you're struggling, if your new confidence will crack, if you've somehow slipped back into old patterns. Any sign of weakness would reassure them that your transformation isn't permanent, that the power they once assumed over you still exists in some form. The reality is, your strength can't be measured by rumors or reports. It's visible in the way you hold yourself, in the decisions you make for yourself, and in the calm confidence that radiates from your actions. But they can't see that. They're too invested in needing proof that you're still predictable, still manageable. Their questions aren't rooted in care. They're rooted in a subtle fear, a silent envy, and a desperate desire to understand something that's inherently outside of their control. Meanwhile, your growth is quiet, consistent, and undeniable. It doesn't require their approval, explanation, or validation. Every step you take away from their expectations proves their curiosity is misplaced. They're left grasping for answers through others because they cannot face the truth. You are stronger, wiser, and untouchable precisely because you no longer revolve around their opinions or influence. And that realization, unspoken, undeniable, is what keeps them asking, probing, and observing, hoping for insight into a strength they cannot comprehend firsthand. Number 7. You're moving in a direction that no longer includes their validation. One of the most powerful shifts you can make in life is to stop seeking approval from people who were never meant to celebrate your growth. For years, you might have unconsciously shaped your decisions, moods, and behaviors around the expectations of others. Their opinions, their judgments, their fleeting approval, they used to matter because you allowed them to. But at some point, something clicked. You realized your life, your energy, and your focus are too valuable to be measured by someone else's perception. And the moment you start moving without needing their validation, everything changes. This is exactly when they start asking mutual friends if you're okay. They're not worried about you. They're worried about their relevance. They're scrambling to understand how you could thrive, make bold choices, or pursue your path without seeking their nod of approval. That panic stems from the uncomfortable truth. Your growth and independence show them that their influence over you has diminished, maybe even disappeared entirely. Your life no longer fits the script they imagined for you, and they can't process that you don't need to consult them to succeed or find peace. The beauty of this shift is quiet but undeniable. You no longer wait for permission. You no longer seek recognition, and you no longer mold yourself to make anyone else comfortable. Your decisions are yours, your boundaries are yours, and your focus is yours. and this autonomy is terrifying for those who once relied on their proximity to you to feel significant. When you stop looking for validation, it exposes a reality they've been avoiding. Their opinions, while once influential, are now irrelevant to your trajectory. Every step you take in this direction amplifies the dissonance for them. They are forced to watch from the sidelines as you operate on your own terms, unaffected by their expectations or judgments. Their questions, their curiosity, their whispers, they're all attempts to reconcile with a fact they can't accept. You're moving forward, and their validation is no longer a part of your journey. You are unstoppable, not because you prove anything to them, but because you've finally stopped proving anything at all. Number 8. They can't understand how you got stronger without their support. One of the most unsettling realities for people who underestimated you is realizing that your growth didn't require their help. For years, some may have assumed that you needed their guidance, validation, or approval to move forward. They believed they had a role in shaping your life, whether intentionally or not, and that your success or stability depended on them. But when you rise without leaning on their influence, without waiting for their permission, and without needing their approval, it shakes the very foundation of what they thought they knew about you. That's why they start asking mutual friends if you're okay. They're not worried about your well-being. They're trying to decode a reality that undermines their ego. You flourished on your own. It's hard for them to accept because it contradicts their narrative. In their minds, growth should be a shared experience, something that ties you to them, something that keeps you within the orbit of their influence. Your independence, however, dismantles that idea. It proves that your strength wasn't contingent on their presence or validation. Every step you've taken in private, every boundary you've set, and every decision you've made for yourself highlights the fact that you didn't need them, and that realization can feel threatening. Their curiosity stems from a need to regain some semblance of understanding. They want to know how you got there without them, as if tracking your life through someone else could explain the unexplainable, that your power and resilience are self-generated. It forces them to confront a hard truth they've been avoiding, that they never had the control or influence they imagined, and perhaps never will. Your growth, independent and unapologetic, becomes a silent statement. It tells them that they no longer hold the keys to your decisions, emotions, or destiny. It's not a challenge aimed at them. It's simply the natural outcome of stepping into your own power. And while they scramble to grasp it through gossip or second-hand reports, you continue moving forward, untethered by their opinions, completely untouchable in a way they'll never fully understand. Number 9. Your reinvention doesn't fit the old narratives they created about you. People are experts at putting others into boxes. They assign roles, expectations, and stories to the people around them and live comfortably within those narratives. For years, they believed they knew who you were, the person who laughed on cue, tolerated certain behaviors, forgave too easily, or played along with their expectations. Your life fit into their script, and that predictability made them feel secure. But the moment you reinvent yourself, step out of that mold, and start living on your own terms, those narratives collapse. And when something they thought they understood no longer exists, panic sets in. That's why they start asking mutual friends if you're okay. They're trying to reconcile a version of you that doesn't exist anymore with the version they thought they had memorized. Your transformation disrupts the illusion they had carefully maintained. Every new boundary, every confident choice, every decision made independently of their influence shatters the version of you they built in their minds. They aren't curious out of care. They're curious because their assumptions have been proven wrong, and they don't know how to process it. It's uncomfortable to see someone evolve in ways that challenge the story you've told yourself about them. Their mental maps are outdated, and now they're navigating a terrain they didn't expect. This is why they go through others to check on you. Direct contact would force them to confront the truth too quickly, that you are no longer living within the limits they imagined. It's easier to ask second-hand, to gather bits of information, and hope that the reinvention is temporary or fragile. But your reinvention is neither temporary nor fragile. It's deliberate, consistent, and unapologetic. By stepping fully into this new version of yourself, you're showing them that you are not a character in someone else's story. You've become your own story, and that freedom is unsettling to anyone who relied on their outdated narrative to understand or control you. Your life now exists outside of their framework, and every day you move further along your path, they're left trying to decode what they can no longer contain or predict. Number 10. They've realized you're becoming someone they can't manipulate. One of the most frightening things for people who relied on influence over you is recognizing that their tactics no longer work. For years, they may have used guilt, flattery, nostalgia, or emotional pressure to get you to bend to their will. They assumed you could be steered, swayed, or convinced to maintain patterns that benefited them. But as you grow, learn your worth, and establish boundaries, their old methods lose power. The moment they realize you cannot be manipulated, they panic. They start asking mutual friends if you're okay, not because they care about you, but because they are trying to gauge if their influence has been permanently cut off. It's a subtle but powerful shift. When people can't control someone they thought they understood, their insecurity rises. They feel exposed, helpless, and frustrated because the dynamics they depended on have vanished. Your independence, clarity, and refusal to react predictably dismantle their sense of superiority. They want to understand your next move, hoping that maybe you'll stumble or revert to old patterns, but deep down, they know they've lost their leverage. Their questions about you are really an attempt to measure whether their impact still exists. They watch your life indirectly, asking others for updates, trying to find cracks where they can regain some sense of influence. They're uncomfortable facing you directly because that would force them to acknowledge your strength and the fact that they no longer hold the keys to your decisions or emotions. Your transformation is quiet, steady, and undeniable. Every boundary you set, every decision made for yourself, and every moment you walk away from old manipulations signals your autonomy. They're forced to confront a reality they cannot change. You are no longer theirs to control, and nothing they say or do can bring you back to the version of yourself that once made them comfortable. The truth is, your unshakable self-direction is exactly what drives their curiosity, their questions, and their silent alarm. You have become untouchable, and they are left scrambling for answers in the only way they know. Through others, instead of facing the undeniable fact that you now belong entirely to yourself. Number 11. You trigger the fear that you won't return to who you once were. People rarely panic when you fall apart. They panic when you stop falling apart the way they expect. For years, many got used to a version of you that was predictable, forgiving, easily accessible, and willing to shrink just to keep the peace. That version made life comfortable for them. They knew how to handle you, how to approach you, how to influence you. But once you began to grow into someone stronger, clearer, and far more self-respecting, something shifted in their minds. They realized that this new version of you might not be a temporary phase, and that scares them more than anything. This is why they start asking mutual friends if you're okay. They're not checking in out of kindness. They're looking for signs that you might go back to the version of you that benefited them. They're hoping that your new confidence is just a moment, not a movement. They're waiting for the old patterns to reappear, the old boundaries to weaken, the old softness to resurface. Because if you don't return to who you once were, they have to accept a truth they've been avoiding. Their access to you has changed forever. Your transformation forces them to confront a loss they don't know how to express. They miss the version of you they could predict, the one who would overlook disrespect or downplay your own needs just to keep harmony. They miss the you who needed their validation, approval, or presence. Deep down, they know that if the new you stays, the dynamics of your relationship with them will never be the same. And that fear fuels their curiosity, their gossip, and their sudden interest. Your evolution is steady and intentional. It isn't dramatic and it isn't for show, it's real. And because of that, they can't shake the fear that this version of you is permanent. You've become someone who chooses themselves without apology, someone who isn't shaped by their expectations anymore. And the truth that rattles them is simple. Once you outgrow an old identity, returning to it becomes impossible. They sense that permanence, and it terrifies them more than your silence ever could. Number 12. Your name now represents a shift, not a story. For a long time, people like to define others through narratives, through the roles they've played, the mistakes they've made, the dramas they were involved in. Your life becomes a story in their minds, predictable, confined, and easy to reference. But once you evolve, once you begin living intentionally, your name stops representing a chapter and starts representing movement. A shift that they can't package into words or fit neatly into their scripts. That's when the questions start. They're not really asking if you're okay. They're trying to decode a reality that refuses to be decoded. Your presence, your energy, and your actions now signal change, not a continuation of the old story they've been telling themselves. You've stopped performing for their narrative and started operating on your own terms. Every choice, every boundary, every moment of focus and self-discipline creates an energy that cannot be summarized by gossip or speculation, and that unsettles them deeply. They're used to thinking they know your story, the one that fits neatly into the comfort of their assumptions. But now, your life is dynamic, fluid, and evolving, and that unpredictability triggers their curiosity and unease. They ask mutual friends about you because they need confirmation that you're still recognizable in some way, that the shift hasn't gone too far. They want reassurance that there's still a version of you that conforms to their expectations, even if it's no longer your reality. Their questions are a reflection of their inability to reconcile the person you are now with the person they once knew. Your growth has turned your name into a signal of independence. It carries a presence, a weight, and a standard that cannot be undermined by their assumptions. They are no longer engaging with a static character. They're grappling with a living, evolving force. And while they search for answers through others, you continue moving, reshaping yourself, and becoming untouchable in ways that can't be whispered about, only witnessed. Your shift is undeniable, and that truth is what makes them ask, watch, and speculate, all while you quietly redefine your own story. Number 13. You've hit a level of personal power that highlights their lack of it. When you rise quietly but relentlessly, people around you can't help but notice, and it makes them uncomfortable. Your progress, discipline, and clarity are like a spotlight shining on their own inaction. They see your focus, your calm confidence, and your independence, and it forces them to confront the reality that they've been coasting, hiding, or settling. That discomfort often translates into questions asked through mutual friends, casual curiosity disguised as concern. They're not worried about your well-being. They're measuring themselves against your energy, trying to understand how someone they once underestimated became untouchable. Your personal power isn't flashy or performative. It's consistent. It's the kind of energy that doesn't bend to anyone else's whims, the kind that protects your boundaries without announcing itself. And because it's subtle yet undeniable, it makes others question their own choices, their own weaknesses, and the ways they've limited themselves. They don't like seeing it because it's a reflection they can't escape. It's easier to ask around about you than to admit that their lack of action, discipline, or vision has left them behind. This is why your name suddenly becomes a topic. It's a sign of their internal struggle. Every boundary you uphold, every step you take forward without seeking approval, and every achievement that emerges from your determination highlights the contrast between your evolution and their stagnation. Your power exposes them in ways that words cannot. It silently demands acknowledgement of your self-mastery while simultaneously revealing theirs. They are watching, questioning, and gossiping, not because they care about you. They're trying to make sense of their own limitations in the shadow of your growth. And no matter how many updates they gather through mutual friends, they cannot replicate your focus, determination, or discipline. Your personal power is untouchable because it is earned, not given. The more they probe, the clearer it becomes. You are no longer operating within their narrative, and the realization of their inadequacy only strengthens the impact of your rise. Your energy alone becomes a force that commands attention, whether they admit it or not. Number 14. They're asking because your rise feels personal, even though it isn't. When you rise in ways they didn't expect, people often take it personally, even though it has nothing to do with them. Your growth, clarity, and independence expose what they've been avoiding about themselves. They feel the weight of their own stagnation, their unfulfilled potential, and the mistakes they've made, and instead of confronting it, they project those feelings onto you. Suddenly, your success feels like a reflection of their failures, a silent judgment they can't escape. That's why they start asking mutual friends if you're okay. They're trying to process emotions they don't want to admit directly. Your evolution isn't designed to compete with anyone. It's simply the natural outcome of claiming your own power and prioritizing your own path. But to them, your self-mastery is a disruption. It challenges the narratives they've built about you and about themselves. They see you setting boundaries, making confident decisions, and thriving independently, and it triggers a mix of fear, envy, and confusion. The rise they observe in you feels like a personal attack because it highlights the distance between who they are and who you've become. This is why they seek information through others. They aren't reaching out because they care. They're trying to measure whether this change is temporary, whether the new version of you will stumble, or whether they can find a way to regain influence over your life. They want reassurance that you are still the you they could manage or predict, because accepting your permanence is uncomfortable and even threatening to their ego. Your rise exposes truths they would rather ignore, that your life moves on your terms, that your decisions require no explanation, and that your power is inherent, not granted. No gossip, inquiry, or speculation can diminish the reality of your growth. They ask because they are grappling with feelings your success stirs in them, but ultimately, none of it diminishes your momentum. You are untouchable, unapologetically advancing, and entirely unaffected by their perception. The fact that your success unsettles them so deeply only confirms the magnitude of the transformation they cannot influence, control, or undo. Conclusion. Your rise is undeniable. Every step you've taken, every boundary you've set, and every layer of self-respect you've added has shifted the balance in ways others can't comprehend. They ask about you not out of concern, but because your transformation exposes their stagnation, threatens their sense of control, and challenges the narratives they've built to feel comfortable in their own lives. Your absence speaks volumes. Your independence commands attention. Your growth illuminates the truth they've avoided confronting within themselves. and through it all, you remain untouchable, operating on your own terms, unaffected by gossip, speculation, or attempts to measure your strength from the sidelines. What's extraordinary about this journey is that your power isn't performative. It's quiet, consistent, and deeply rooted in self-awareness. Every glance back, every whispered question, and every second-hand update from mutual friends only proves one thing. You are evolving beyond anyone's ability to influence or contain you. You are no longer a character in their story. You are the author of your own life, writing it with clarity, intention, and unwavering confidence. They can wonder, question, and speculate, but your momentum, your energy, and your direction cannot be stopped. You've become a force that demands acknowledgement without needing permission, a presence that inspires reflection without uttering a word. So, embrace your evolution, own your boundaries, celebrate your independence. Your growth is your triumph, and their curiosity is merely a reflection of the magnitude of your transformation. You've moved beyond expectation, beyond influence, and beyond limitation. You are unstoppable. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that elevate your mindset and sharpen your perspective. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video so others can see how unstoppable growth truly looks. Your journey is your power. Let's inspire more people to claim theirs. Stay awakened, chosen ones.